Sophia Warren lived a life that seemed straight out of a fairy tale. Her sprawling estate, nestled among manicured gardens, was a testament to her husband Ethan's success. The grand home was filled with luxury and comfort, a beacon of prosperity. Ethan, a successful businessman, provided everything they could ever need: financial stability, a lavish lifestyle, and security. They had a 12-year-old daughter, Emily, who was the light of their world. Yet despite the external perfection, Sophia felt trapped. Her marriage to Ethan had become more of a transaction than a partnership, with his career consuming him, leaving little space for emotional connection. What once was a bond built on love had faded into routine, and she found herself longing for more. Longing for passion, longing for someone who could truly see her. Emily, with her lively curiosity, adored her mother. Yet even she could sense the cracks in their seemingly perfect family. She often retreated to the garden, a place full of life and color, where she felt a sense of peace that eluded her inside the house. It was on one summer morning, as if fate had intervened, that a new gardener arrived, Daniel Hart. He was tall, rugged, and carried himself with a quiet confidence that immediately set him apart. His piercing green eyes held a hint of mystery, and there was an air of calm around him that made Sophia take notice. As he trimmed the hedges, his movements were measured and purposeful, a stark contrast to the frantic pace of her own life. There was something magnetic about him, something that made her pause every time she saw him working. Daniel's presence seemed to breathe new life into the estate. Under his care, the garden, once neglected and overrun, began to flourish. Sophia found herself walking outside more often, drawn to his work. His passion for plants intrigued her, and the way he spoke about them with such reverence was a far cry from the cold, transactional nature of her own marriage. His voice was soothing, calm, and gentle, a sharp contrast to Ethan's clipped tones and constant preoccupation with work. One afternoon, as Sophia wandered through the garden with a book in hand, she found Daniel on his knees, planting roses. He looked up at her and smiled, a smile that seemed to light up his entire face. "It's the garden that's alive," Daniel replied humbly. "I just help it along." Their conversations at first were innocent and casual, but soon they began to delve deeper. Sophia found herself sharing more than she ever had with Ethan in years: her frustrations, her loneliness, and the emptiness she felt within her marriage. Daniel listened with a calm understanding that soothed something deep within her. His words, gentle yet profound, stayed with her long after their conversations ended. "Sometimes," he said one afternoon, "you have to let go of what suffocates you to truly bloom." His words struck a chord deep within Sophia, awakening feelings she thought were long buried beneath years of neglect. That night, as she lay in bed, Sophia couldn't sleep. The memory of their conversation replayed in her mind, and she tried to tell herself it was harmless, just friendly exchange. But deep down, she knew it was more. She was drawn to him, in a way that both terrified and exhilarated her. Days turned into weeks, and their interactions continued to grow more frequent. Sophia found excuses to bring him lemonade while he worked, and their hands would brush ever so lightly, each touch lingering just a bit longer than necessary. Each glance they exchanged carried a tension, an unspoken connection that neither could deny. But guilt gnawed at her. She was a wife, a mother. How could she allow herself to fall for the gardener? Yet, every time she tried to distance herself, Daniel's presence seemed to pull her back, like an invisible force that she couldn't escape. One afternoon, during a light drizzle, as Daniel pruned the rose bushes, Sophia watched from the veranda. Ethan was away on a business trip, and Emily was at a friend's house, leaving the estate eerily quiet. The only sounds were the soft patter of rain and the occasional snip of Daniel's shears. Sophia, feeling the chill of the damp air, stepped outside with an umbrella and walked toward him. "You'll catch a cold working in this weather," she called out, her voice soft. He turned to her, his green eyes locking with hers. "Rain doesn't bother me. Besides, the roses thrive in it," he said, his voice steady and deep. Sophia smiled, a soft laugh escaping her lips. For a moment they stood there in the rain, their faces close. She should have gone inside, but something held her there. And then, without thinking, their lips met. The kiss was gentle, but charged with an electricity that left both of them breathless. Time seemed to stand still as the rain poured around them, soaking their clothes, but neither of them cared. When the kiss finally broke, reality crashed back into Sophia's mind. She stepped back, her hand covering her mouth. "I can't. I'm sorry," she whispered, her eyes welling up with tears. Daniel nodded, his expression unreadable. "I understand," he said quietly, but his eyes betrayed a longing that matched her own. Sophia rushed back inside, her heart pounding in her chest. She told herself it was a mistake, that it could never happen again, but deep inside, she knew the line had been crossed. What neither of them realized was that someone had seen them. A figure, hidden in the shadows of the guest house, watching their every move. This figure, though unseen at that moment, would soon play a pivotal role in unraveling everything. As the days passed, Sophia tried to ignore the growing tension between herself and Daniel, but it was impossible. Every time she crossed paths with him, the attraction, the pull between them grew stronger. She tried to distance herself, but the garden became both her sanctuary and her greatest temptation. She found herself seeking out more excuses to visit the garden, to be near him, even though she knew it was wrong. Daniel, too, was conflicted. His admiration for Sophia had deepened, but he knew the danger of their growing connection. Still, the feelings he had for her were undeniable, and every glance, every touch, fueled the fire that neither of them could extinguish. One afternoon, Sophia ventured into the greenhouse, under the pretense of checking on Emily's favorite flowers. Daniel was inside, working among the plants. The warm, humid air clung to his skin, and his presence felt like a magnet, pulling her toward him. As she stepped inside, her dress brushing against the plants, Daniel looked up. His voice was low as he spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Sophia swallowed, her voice trembling. "I know," she said softly, "but I can't stay away." Daniel stepped closer, his hands trembling as he reached for hers. "Neither can I." Their lips met again, this time with unrestrained passion. The world outside the greenhouse seemed to fade away, as they gave in to the desire they had fought so hard to suppress. But the moment, as fleeting as it was, quickly gave way to the harsh reality of their situation. Sophia's guilt grew with each passing day, but so did her love for Daniel. She began to lead a double life, one as the dutiful wife and mother, and the other as a woman consumed by forbidden love. Emily, ever perceptive, started noticing changes in her mother. "Mom, you've been in the garden a lot lately," she said one evening, her innocent eyes filled with curiosity. Sophia forced a smile, trying to keep up the illusion. "Just enjoying the flowers, sweetheart," she replied, but Emily wasn't convinced. The little girl began to observe more closely, picking up on the subtle shifts in her mother's behavior. Even Ethan, though often consumed with work, began to sense that something was off. He couldn't ignore the distance growing between him and Sophia. One night, as they lay in bed, he turned to her. "Sophia," he asked softly, "is everything okay? You've been different lately." She turned toward him, her lips curving into a reassuring smile. "I'm fine, Ethan. Just tired." But Ethan wasn't convinced. The cracks in the facade had begun to show, and he started to notice the tiny, seemingly insignificant clues. An abandoned scarf in the garden, lingering glances between Sophia and Daniel, that hinted at something deeper. Something was changing, and Ethan was starting to piece it all together. Sophia Warren's affair with Daniel Hart grew in intensity, each stolen moment in the guest house adding fuel to a passion they could neither deny nor control. Their love, reckless and beautiful, blossomed amidst the secrecy, becoming more dangerous with every meeting. One evening, as the sun sank behind the horizon, Daniel surprised Sophia with a bouquet of wildflowers. "For you," he said, his voice full of tenderness. Sophia's heart swelled as she took the bouquet, her voice thick with emotion. "No one's ever given me wildflowers before." Daniel's smile was soft. "They remind me of you, beautiful yet free." Their affair continued to deepen, growing bolder with each passing day. But so did the danger of being exposed. Ethan, unaware of the full extent of his wife's infidelity, began noticing subtle changes in her behavior. Sophia was often in the garden, her phone glued to her side, and her interactions with Daniel seemed increasingly secretive. One evening, Ethan overheard a conversation between the two that, although seemingly innocent, carried an undertone of something far more intimate. His suspicions began to stir, and he decided to act on them. Ethan quietly enlisted the help of the housekeeper, but her silence spoke volumes. He began combing through phone records, and even considered hiring a private investigator. Then one evening, as Sophia was out, Ethan found a scarf in the guest house. A scarf that had been a gift he'd given her years ago. He gripped it tightly in his hands, his mind racing with questions and doubts. Meanwhile, Emily, unaware of the full depth of the situation, stumbled upon something that would alter everything. One day, while playing near the greenhouse, she noticed her mother and Daniel through the glass. They were too close, too intimate. Emily didn't fully understand what she had seen, but she knew it wasn't right. She didn't say anything at first, but the memory of the moment haunted her, leaving her with a nagging question that wouldn't go away. As Sophia and Daniel's affair grew more intense, they became increasingly reckless, less cautious. One evening, while meeting in the guest house, they were interrupted by the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. "It's Ethan," Sophia whispered, panic flashing across her face. Daniel slipped out the back door, vanishing into the shadows. Sophia quickly composed herself and returned to the house, but she couldn't shake the feeling that their secret was on the verge of unraveling. Ethan, now more suspicious than ever, began putting the pieces together: the scarf, the cryptic conversations, and Sophia's growing distance. He knew something was happening, something he couldn't ignore. One evening, he confronted Sophia, holding the scarf in his hands. "Do you have something to tell me?" His voice was cold, and the room seemed to shrink with tension. Sophia froze, her mind spinning. She knew the truth was about to be exposed. "It's just a scarf, Ethan. I must have left it in the guest house while checking on Emily's things." But Ethan didn't believe her. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I know something's going on, Sophia. You're not the same, and I won't be made a fool in my own home." Before Sophia could respond, Emily walked into the room, her innocent presence cutting through the thick tension. "What's going on?" she asked, her eyes darting between her parents. Ethan forced a smile and ruffled her hair. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just a little grown-up conversation." Sophia seized the opportunity to diffuse the situation. "Ethan's right, Emily. Everything's fine. Why don't you go finish your homework?" Reluctantly, Emily left the room, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Ethan began monitoring Sophia more closely, staying home from work more often, pretending to be busy in his office while secretly watching her every move. Sophia, sensing his growing suspicion, became increasingly paranoid. She avoided Daniel, though her heart ached with longing every time they crossed paths. Daniel, too, felt the weight of the situation. He wanted to protect Sophia, but he knew their affair couldn't continue without severe consequences. One evening, Daniel left a note for Sophia in the greenhouse. "We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow after sunset." Sophia's heart leapt when she found it, but so did her fear. She couldn't stay away from Daniel, but the risks were growing higher. Emily, still haunted by what she had seen in the greenhouse, began to piece together the truth. She noticed the way her mother's face lit up when Daniel was around, and the increasing distance between her parents. One afternoon, Emily confided in her father. "Dad," she began hesitantly, "I think Mom is hiding something." Ethan's heart sank. "What do you mean, Emily?" Emily explained what she had seen in the greenhouse. The closeness, the way her mother and Daniel had looked at each other. Ethan's suspicions were confirmed, and his rage boiled over. That evening, he confronted Daniel in the garden. The moon hung low, casting eerie shadows across the estate. "I know what you've been doing," Ethan growled, his voice trembling with fury. "You think you can come into my home, touch my wife, and get away with it?" Daniel stood his ground, his jaw tight. "Sophia deserves better than a man who's never there for her. You've been so consumed with your work that you didn't even notice her unhappiness." Without warning, Ethan lunged at Daniel, and the two men collided, their fists flying. The perfectly manicured flower beds were trampled in the chaos. Sophia, hearing the commotion, ran outside, screaming for them to stop. "Ethan, please," she cried, stepping between the two men. "Stop. You're destroying everything." Ethan's face contorted with rage. You betrayed me, Sophia, he shouted. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me. Tears streamed down Sophia's face. You gave me everything but yourself, Ethan. I've been alone for years, and you never even noticed. For a moment, Ethan's anger faltered, giving way to pain. But before he could respond, Emily appeared, trembling, watching her family unravel. Stop it, she cried. You're ruining everything. Amid the chaos, Daniel, desperate to protect Sophia, confessed something that would change everything. I never meant to fall in love with Sophia, he said, his voice heavy with regret. But there's something you need to know, Ethan. This isn't just about her. This is about you. Ethan frowned, confusion in his eyes. What are you talking about? Daniel took a deep breath. Years ago you ruined my family. Your company destroyed my father's business, left us with nothing. I came here to make you feel the same pain you caused us. Falling for Sophia wasn't part of the plan. The air grew thick with tension, as the truth settled over them like a heavy fog. Sophia stared at Daniel in disbelief. Was any of it real? She whispered, her heart breaking. Daniel met her gaze, his eyes filled with regret. Yes, I love you, Sophia. But I can't change what brought me here. Torn between the life she had built with Ethan and the love she had found in Daniel, Sophia stood frozen, a woman divided. Emily's sobs broke the silence, grounding Sophia in the reality of what was at stake. I can't do this anymore, Sophia said, her voice firm. I've made mistakes, but I won't let them destroy our family. She turned to Daniel, tears streaming down her face. I loved you, but I can't be with you. Not like this. Daniel nodded, his expression heartbreaking. I understand. Sophia turned to Ethan. I'm sorry for betraying you, but we both let this happen. If you want to try, I'll fight for us. But if you can't forgive me, I'll leave. Ethan's anger slowly dissolved into exhaustion. He looked at Sophia, then at Emily, who clung to her mother's side. For her sake, he said, his voice heavy with emotion, we'll try. That night, Daniel left the estate, disappearing into the darkness, leaving behind a trail of broken promises and shattered hearts. Sophia and Ethan began the painful journey of rebuilding their marriage. They attended counseling, tried to mend the broken pieces of their relationship, and focused on the future. Emily, though scarred by the events, found some comfort in knowing her family was still intact. As for Sophia, she carried the memory of Daniel in her heart, a bittersweet reminder of a love that was both beautiful and destructive. The garden, once a place of passion and secrets, became a symbol of growth and renewal. Though the scar of betrayal would never fully fade, the Warrens chose to focus on the future, determined to find peace in the aftermath of the storm.